you can come down closer so that we can feel like we're having a conversation together. So if those at the back, if you could come and just fill maybe the first 3 rows, that'll be awesome. Okay, so my name is Devon Dublin. I'm a research fellow at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and I'm working within the Division of Island Nations, which gels well with this region, which is also made up of many small island developing states. The discussion today will focus mainly on the challenges that exist with disaster response, disaster management. And also we want to look at a particular aspect, which is sea level rise. Usually, when we talk about disasters, we talk about the big ones, like hurricanes, volcanoes and stuff. But we don't necessarily address sea level rise specifically. So we want to look at that a little. So the way in which the session is going to be done, the director of the division, Mrs. Shiozawa, he's going to speak first, just to give you an introduction about why we're doing this. And then after that, we will have a brief presentation from the Caribbean. Just a couple months ago, there was Hurricane Beryl. I don't know if you've seen it on the news, which actually ran through the Caribbean, ravaged a few islands, including Grenada, St. Vincent. It went all the way to the US, correct? Yeah, it went all the way to the US. So he's going to talk a little bit about that. And after that, we'll just have a discussion. And I think we have enough time for everyone here to maybe have a comment or question at some point. So that's the way it's going to be done. So first of all, let me just invite Hide to come and talk to you, and then we'll start the discussion.
Hello, everyone. Okay, when we think about the impact of climate change, most of us will agree that natural disasters and sea level rise are the most immediate threats to human security. To deal with such threats, disaster management is the key. And there are 4 phases in the disaster management, such as mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And strengthening these phases will lead to strengthening the climate resilience of nations. For example, Japan supports many countries in this sector through the Japanese government, JICA, NGOs, but there are limitations of their support. However, even though there are limitations, there must be the ways to improve the resilience of each nation. Today, our friends from Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific Island countries will share their experiences and challenges related to natural disasters and sea level rise. I'm looking forward to learning about similarities and differences between nations and between regions for further discussions. Binaka Bakarebu. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So indeed, the members of the panel here are from the Caribbean, some are from the Pacific, and some are from Indian Ocean Islands. So it allows us to actually do a bit of a comparison between regions, perspectives between regions as well. And this is also very important because we've heard a lot about SIDS, and oftentimes the interactions between these countries within the regions are limited. And you can imagine it's actually difficult. Just flying from one of these regions to the other is an exorbitant price and also a very long distance as well. But what is great is that within the regions, within these individual regions, we do have quite a lot going on. And we need to find ways in which we could share these experiences between the regions. And so this is basically what this discussion is about. And hopefully, at some point, this level of interaction could be scaled up at different forums and different initiatives. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Dr. Walters, Terence. He's from Grenada, and he is the head of the institution that's responsible for disaster. It's called the National Disaster Management Agency of Grenada, and he's going to talk a little bit about Beryl, and then after that, we'll start the discussion.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks, Dr. Dublin. Terence Walters, and I'm from Grenada. I'll talk a little bit about my country here and Beryl. Just click. Point it to the screen. All right, thank you. So Grenada is a small island in the Caribbean, small island developing state, and population of about 110,000 with 132 square miles. And it's a multi-island state, three islands. The main island is Grenada, and then you have two smaller islands, one Carriacou and one Petit Martinique. Now, Grenada is in the Caribbean vulnerable to a number of hazards, hurricanes, earthquakes, and then you have flooding, landslides, coastal erosion, drought. So a number of hazards, and then you have the man-induced hazards that we are also vulnerable to. Then there is one submarine volcano located about 8 kilometers north of the main island. It's a huge volcano, submarine. The summit of the volcano is about 500 feet below the water. It has erupted about 14 times since we have monitoring it, and it continues. We had elevated activity earlier this year, so there's that major hazard to the north of Grenada, and it's in between the islands. All right, so that's one of the other hazards that we're faced with. Now, the Hurricane Beryl on July 1st in 2024, okay? Grenada was impacted by the hurricane, but the major impacts were to the north of the main island and the two islands, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. These islands, along with St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Jamaica, and a number of other islands were significantly impacted. And but just focus on Grenada, all right? The two islands to the north, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, were significantly impacted. 98% of homes damaged or destroyed. Take that, 98% of homes either damaged or destroyed. Okay? Then we had damage to infrastructure, to roads, to government buildings, schools, hospitals, the airport, etc. Okay? Agriculture, the environment, coral reefs, and or historical buildings. But importantly, there were only 3 deaths. 3 deaths. 1 on mainland Grenada and 2 on Carriacou. So the challenges, because after the hurricane, and you had that significant impact from the hurricane, you have a number of challenges. Transportation of the relief supplies between the islands, and we depend on boats because Carriacou only has a small airport that can accommodate small aircrafts up to about 19-seater. So you depended on boats and private boats. You had to depend on private boats. So that was a significant challenge. When relief supplies came into the mainland, you now had to depend on private boats to get it to Carriacou and Pitimatnik. And given the circumstances, people lost their homes, lost everything. You had to provide relief supplies for them. And then there's transportation of people. You had to take that into consideration. And then now response personnel, because you've had the hurricane impacting everyone, and people didn't have homes and they lost everything. The response personnel really limited, so you had to depend on people from the region to come in. And then you had a weak communication system, right? That's one of the things that we have to look at. Drinking water, the people of Carriacou and Pitimatnik depended on cisterns, which is rainwater harvesting, and these huge tanks. But now that the roofs were gone, the cisterns, you couldn't catch the rainwater, and you had a problem. So we had an issue with drinking water, so we had to depend on bottled water for the people of Carriacou and Pitimatnik. And then there was significantly psychosocial support was needed, because after an event like that, people need psychosocial support, to the point where we had 2 suicides after the event. Okay, because I mean, you've lost everything, everything around is destroyed. So we have to take that into consideration. But then we continued with the recovery and started to look at water, electricity, transportation, businesses reopened, health, schools. Then you had to rehabilitate the airport and reopen it. And we received quite a significant amount of assistance from regional and international entities, agencies, organizations. And our umbrella response entity in the Caribbean, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, we commonly call it CDEMA, provided significant assistance for the country. So we can say that we received quite a lot of assistance. Now, just a few photos, all right? This is the morning after the hurricane, and we were preparing, the photo on the left, we were preparing to go to Carriacou, the one on the right. When we got to Carriacou, that's what we were seeing in Carriacou. These are some of the images of the destruction. Okay, some of the images of the destruction. And whenever there's a disaster, there's always people, right? There's always people involved. So we have to keep that. Let's go. Some additional images from Carriacou. Okay, because everything, the hurricane had just destroyed just about everything. Yeah, these are some additional images. The photo on the top right, that's the Emergency Operations Center. Thankfully, it was not destroyed. And the bottom left, that's a meeting, that's the initial meeting at the Emergency Operations Center in Carriacou the next morning. Some additional images. This is the Coast Guard, small Coast Guards. And then if you look to the photo at the top left, you'd see a 40-foot container on a vehicle. So the wind just took the container onto the vehicle there. All right, and that's the port. Okay, port was destroyed. And this was in Pitimatnik, the smaller of the smallest of the 3 islands, some of the devastation there. So there we had it for the impact of Hurricane Beryl on July 1st, 2024. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terence. You know, when you're on the aircraft and they give the security announcement, they say, when the masks fall down, put it on first before you help others. So I thought that was quite interesting when the center that's responsible for responding was standing strong. If not, I guess you would be hampered to respond. And I guess what's important now is that in the rebuilding efforts, we kind of like build buildings similar to the ones you're using. So what I'm going to ask you to do is throughout the discussion that we have, just make a note of any questions that you may have, and then we'll do it at the end. So if there are any questions on this presentation, please also keep that in mind. Now, in Terrence's presentation, he mentioned the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management, SEDEMA. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask Kenisha. Kenisha is from the beautiful island of St. Lucia, and she's the director of the National Emergency Management Office in St. Lucia. So she holds a very similar role as Terrence, but in St. Lucia. And I'm gonna ask her to just tell us a little bit about SEDEMA, how it functions, and more importantly, how the local offices like yours interact with this regional body that's responsible for disaster management.
Thank you, Devon. And again, my name is Kenisha Jeffrey Isenbert. I'm the director of NEMO in St. Lucia. St. Lucia, like Grenada, we are quite small as well, 238 square miles, about 182,000 our population. But we boast that we are home to the Olympic champion, Miss Julian Alfred. So that's our accomplishment. We like to say that. But it would be my pleasure to speak about SEDEMA and their role within our islands. SEDEMA is the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, and it is a regional intergovernmental agency for disaster management in the Caribbean community, or CARICOM. Its primary responsibility is for the coordination of emergency response and relief efforts to participating states that require assistance. SEDEMA in 2009 fully embraced the practice and principles of comprehensive disaster management, or what we call our CDM. And this approach seeks to reduce the risk and loss associated with natural and technological hazards and the effects of climate change to enhance regional sustainable development. SEDEMA has 19 participating states, and they are governed through, we have the council, the technical advisory committee, or what we call TAC, and the coordinating unit, or CU. The council are the heads of government of the participating states, and they determine the policies of SEDEMA. TAC is the National Disaster Coordinators. This is where individuals like myself and Terrence, we sit at that level, and we have representatives of specialized regional organizations, those involving the Met Services, seismic research, who are directly involved in regional disaster management. Then we have the coordinating unit, or what they call the CU, and this one is headed by our executive director, Miss Elizabeth Riley, and the headquarters is in Barbados, and this is where most of our coordination takes place. Through SEDEMA, we have what we call the Regional Response Mechanism, or our RRM, and this is where the participating states benefit from response through SEDEMA. And under the RRM, the participating states, they have the national, regional, and international disaster stakeholders through which external response and relief operations in support of an impacted SEDEMA participating states are coordinated. What that means is that the RRM delivers timely and coordinated relief support to affected SEDEMA participating states from regional agencies, international humanitarian organizations, and other SEDEMA participating states. So as Dr. Terrence would have showed in his presentation, since Grenada was impacted and St. Lucia was not impacted, as a member of SEDEMA, we would have teams from St. Lucia who would have gone across to Grenada to provide assistance in whatever area that would have been requested from Mr. Terrence. This is achieved through 4 basic principles: regional solidarity. Participating states and regional states offer assistance to affected states when necessary within their limits. You can only assist with what you have, your resources. Sovereignty of the state must be respected by all external parties. Compliance with the international humanitarian principles, and that includes humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Adherence to the principle of partnership, that is transparency. Your efforts must be result-oriented and responsibility. RRM consists of a number of plans. You would have family plans, national plans, you have regional coordination plans, and specialized support function plans. And all of these, they outline the SOPs, our standard operating procedures, and protocols for operation during emergency period. You would understand under emergency, it's not business as normal. So there are specific standards or specific policies that come into play or activated whenever there is an emergency. They are also guided by, you have MOUs, letter of agreements, and acts of parliament by all the relevant stakeholders. The RRM partners grouping, it is called the Caribbean Development Partners Donor Group, or what we call CDPDG. And they are made up of CARICOM institutions, UN agencies, and other specialized agencies. So this is an overview of CDIMA and how we as a participating state benefit from CDIMA. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kenisha. So we've spoken a bit about hurricanes, but as we know, there are different types of disasters. And so I want to just switch a little bit to another type of disaster, and I'm going to move across to Miss Rose Koloti. She's from Tonga, and she's the Chief Operating Officer for Take the Lead Tonga. And she's going to tell us a little bit about Hunga Tonga volcano and what her experience was with that disaster.
Thank you, Devin. So hi, everyone. As Devin has mentioned, I'm Rose. My two colleagues before me have talked from the perspective of NEMO workers, right? But I'm here to talk from the experience at the grassroots in the community, based on solely my experience. So I'm sorry if I won't be using a lot of technical terms. I'm still a kid at heart, I guess. So to understand the experience that I went through, and like the nature of disaster response for volcanic eruption in Tonga, you have to understand the nature of volcanic eruptions themselves. So Tonga has a population of 100,000. Brief estimated 100,000, and it's a very small country. You can travel the whole country in just 6 hours if you went to Tonga. And the Hunga Tonga Ha'apai volcano is like just a little over 60 kilometers away, which seems like a lot until it erupts, right? Volcanic eruptions to me is a sudden disaster. It's not like a hurricane. They can predict when a hurricane is going to come, when it's going to reach there, like the pathway it's going to take. But volcanic eruptions are different. And so when it happened to us, it was a very sudden event, right? I'm going to tell you the story of what I was doing that day when the volcano erupted. So the government had been putting out announcements that the volcano, it's a very dangerous time. A volcano might erupt anytime, but we're islanders, right? And in my 21 years, I have never seen a volcano erupt. So I thought it probably won't erupt, maybe in another 20 years, 30 years, right? So that day we had a youth outing to the beach, even though the government told us to stay away from the beach. No. So we were on the way to the beach in this rural village. And on the way there, as soon as we were about to turn in to where the beach was, this car just came at us full paced. And in it, people were shouting, "The sea is coming onto land," in our language, of course. That's when the panic started. We reversed the van, we ran back, and all through the way back to our village, we kept shouting at people, "There's a tsunami, there's a tsunami, there's a tsunami," which is what happens when a volcano erupts. But before that, on the road, we heard these sounds, right? And these sounds, it was a volcano erupting, but it didn't sound like a volcano erupting. If anyone has lived through a volcano eruption, you know what I'm talking about. It sounds like someone is hitting a vehicle next to you, which is a very remote sound. You wouldn't think it's a volcano erupting until it happens. So to put it in very simple terms, when an eruption happens, 4 things that you see: ash, lava flows, smoke, noise. So the noise is what I'm talking about, the volcano erupting. Smoke causes a lot of problems, such as respiratory issues. You can't breathe, so you have to wear masks. Think about that. Lava flows, that affects the geography of the land. And then the ash, that was the biggest problem for us because ash covered the entire country. You couldn't go anywhere while this disaster was happening because it covered the windows of your cars, your houses, the windshields. Even if you had the windshield wipers going, it didn't work. Nothing was happening. People were stopping at stores to buy water to keep cleaning their car windows as they were rushing home. I know when I explain it, I mean, you'll only know the devastation when you go through it. So when a volcano erupts, there's also the tsunami. And when tsunami happens, the only thing that comes to mind is water everywhere. Water in your houses, in churches, in schools. Yeah, it's really sad, right? And adding to that, the disaster response in these islands, it's not immediate, which is why I'm so glad to live in a community, a community that focuses on people, because everyone helps each other, right? When the disaster response is not immediate, you have your neighbors, you have your friends, you have your family that help you through these times. The difference between hurricane disasters and volcanic eruptions is volcanic eruption alters the landscape of the land. So it either creates a new island, which is what the Hungatonga Hungahapai volcanic eruption did, or it destroys land. The ash that I was talking about killed trees, killed plants because of the toxic components of the ash. And this, in a way, affects culture too, because in my home, we have what we call the Heilala tree. It has a significant traditional meaning in my country. And this tree is not very common in our communities, but it was destroyed by the ash simply because of the ash, right? When you destroy trees, you cut them down, but they grow, or hurricanes can uproot the trees, but you can plant them again. But these trees die because of toxic components of the ash, and it just withers. The leaves wither, the fruits wither, and the tree just dies, which means you can't grow it again, or you can't regrow. So just to talk about this experience, to show you that, I mean, because Tonga is flat, not only that, it makes it geographically and financially vulnerable to these disasters. NEMO is very well known in our country as a disaster response mechanism, but like all other countries, people often criticize it for the work that they might not be doing, right? But like Kenisha has just said, we can only assist with what we have. So I think the specific issues is immediate response with the resources that we might have. But not only that, we don't have the people that track these volcanic eruptions. We have technology that exists, like tilt meters, GPS stations, but those technologies cannot be used effectively if we don't have the people to use those technology, which we don't. It's often people coming from outside to do this work, which is not good, because as we've listened to the sessions in the past few days, we need to localize the efforts. It needs to be the people in those countries making the efforts for their countries. Because in my opinion, you can't, no outsider can love the country more than your country. Right. So we need to localize efforts, humanize the disasters. It's always the people, as Terrence has mentioned. And together with all of the problems like water contaminations, flooded houses, destroyed crops and yields, not only that, after the volcanic eruption, we could not contact the outside world for weeks because our internet cable is underwater on the seabed. So when the volcano erupted, there was an underwater landslide and underwater, and so our internet cable was destroyed. The effects of a volcano eruption is drastic and widespread. All the coastal communities were affected. It's a lot. But you'll have Google, so you'll see from the pictures. You'll probably hear a lot from it there. But from my experience, yeah, this is what a volcano eruption is and what the disaster response is like for us in Tonga. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. And it's also hits back to what Terrence was talking about, because you also have a volcano right out there too. So I think learning from the experience of Tonga is very important, because maybe people take that volcano for granted sometimes. And I like the fact that you bring out the human aspect of it. That's one thing about natural disasters. It can actually, for people who are very kind, natural disasters can actually bring out that kindness, but it can also bring out, vicious side of people as well. We saw during when some persons were just buying as much as they could off the shelves and didn't care about anybody else. So you do have those two aspects, of our sentiments as humans. And so I want to move a little bit to the stakeholders. One of the groups that we know that's generally more affected than others, or are on the front line, so to speak, tend to be women. And so I'm going to invite Yvette Tari. She is working with UN Women, and she's from Vanuatu. And she's going to give us a little bit of the perspective of women in disasters.
Thank you, Devon. So women in Vanuatu, I will be speaking the perspective for women in Vanuatu and also in the Pacific as a custodian of invaluable traditional ecological knowledge, including weather events and sustainable land practices. However, climate change disrupts natural patterns, undermining the relevance of this knowledge and threatening the cultural practices and heritage that are deeply woven into their daily lives. So I'll be, before providing some of the way forward on how to address the impact of climate change in the woman perspective, I will be sharing an experience that we come across during Cyclone Pam. It's a Category 5 Cyclone Pam in Vanuatu. That was in 2015. So that time I was involving in this project is a USAID climate change project that focus in supporting community to implementing infrastructure as adaptation support to the local communities in Vanuatu. And the time while we were doing assessment to provide us some of the information on how we can provide this infrastructure support, came the Cyclone Pam. And so what we did is we have to wait until Cyclone Pam passed, then we can continue with the implementation. So there were 10 communities in Vanuatu, and 5 from the main island, which is where the Port Vila city is, and 5 in the remote areas. And after the Cyclone Pam, we decided to continue with the implementation. So what we have to do is we have to do the reassessment part again to find out the infrastructure prioritize index. That's the tool that we use to identify the important priorities that the community requires. So when we went to find out the important infrastructure support where the project will support the community. We learned that based on our assessment and our questions to the community, we learned that women were mostly vulnerable in terms of their responsibilities during the event, during the Cyclone Palm Category 5. So questions were asked like, what was your experience? What were you doing during that Category 5 cyclone? And the response from the community, where men keep on telling us that, we went to the space where we can get the network, so we can receive the information from the national meteorology in Vanuatu to get the information, and then went back to the women to tell them that this is the information. It's now in category 3. It's in blue alert. So these are the things that we heard from the community themselves. And we were listening, like, what are the women's responsibility at that time? So throughout the story, we could hear that women are only in the household preparing everything, while the men are running around just to get the information and then pass to the women, and then they can run to the evacuation center. And with everything that only women prepare everything. Yeah? And when it comes to decision making after this, after our assessment, that's when now we have to decide. We have to hear from the community what priorities you need. So it happens that the decisions during that time that came to us as to the project team was mostly from men, and we were like, that's the discussion. That's when the discussion between the team going on, like, whoa, during the event, you can hear that the responsibility, most of the responsibility was prepared by women, preparing all the foods, clothes, and everything to the evacuation center, and all these men just running around trying to get the information and then give to the women to get to the evacuation center. And yeah, that's the thing. So when it comes to decision making, it always happens that the culture always bind women to always keep to their space, not to voice out their concern or what they have been experiencing, what they've been doing to contribute with in the decision making. And yeah, so sorry, yeah, just this story that I want to share. And yeah, you can go to the next page. This is a twin cyclone Judy, and Kevin brought devastating impacts to Vanuatu on the 1st of March and the 3rd of March to 2023, yes. And going to the next one, please. Yeah, so yeah, so the impact of climate change on women in Vanuatu are extreme, given their roles in managing natural resources, sustainable livelihoods, and ensuring community well-being. Hence, the challenges women face are intensified by traditional gender norms, limited access to resources, and their reliance on climate-sensitive sectors like agriculture, fisheries, and other ecosystem services. So some of the aspects which I myself view, and also I believe others could also view as well, is the recommendation here I would provide it is enhance the data quality. That one of the things that I think it will help improve or help for the women in the community to voice out their voices in decision makings. And yes, combine of tools often provide the best results. Example, using mobile apps alongside GIS system and drones together and analyze, interpret data effectively. So you can see here that, as I've said, women are mostly intertwined with the natural resources, and they value all these resources better than men in the community, given that the responsibility they have in these resources and within their homes, it's more than men. So with a rigorous assessments tool and high quality data extraction, we can develop concrete policies that not only enhance livelihood sustainability, but also improve overall community resilience and well-being. And that's where it comes to our theme, to build resilience in the Pacific or in the small island developing states. And yeah, I think that's all. These are some pictures that I've taken during that, which I think women are mostly important in decision making, and also they are the best to provide best advice for resilience through their roles in the community and in their homes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Yvette. And you've actually allowed for a smooth to the next speaker, who is Mr. Manley Compass, and he is youth coordinator, Georgie Kum from Marshall Islands. So I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the youth. How do you see youths, their role when it comes to responses to natural disasters, etc. And if there's any specific area that you think youths are most suited to operate, let us know what you think.
Molto buon. So, ako yung ano ulit. I come from a small island in the north of this Pacific. And sorry. So my island is a atoll nation in the Pacific, which means our island is a small low-lying island. And if you come into our capital city of Majuro, if you stand in the middle of the main road, you'll see on your right, you'll see the ocean side. On your left, you'll see the lagoon side. We're very, very small. And our country is really vulnerable to climate change, especially sea level rise. And over the years, we've been experiencing a lot of king tide and sea level rise. And my country is 2 meters above sea level rise. Only 2 meters above sea level rise. So imagine if tsunami, if we were to have tsunami there, all of our country will be submerged. And right now, back home, our young warriors are fighting to see if there is not see, but to fight this issue, climate change. And sorry. In our country, we already established our National Adaptation Plan. The NAP was established because of our young boys. So the youth our government, we gather all the youth in our country uh, to see, to make sure our voice is heard for the government to like take action. And now we already established our national adaptation plan because of our youth strong voice. And the national adaptation plan is our survival plan. I like to think of it as a wake-up call for the world. Frontline nations like the RMI, whose contribute least amount of carbon emission, bear the brunt of the climate crisis. The NAP looks at ways in which the RMI can adapt to climate change, whether it be through elevation of land or through coastal protection or internal migration. So one thing in my country we don't want to do is mass migration. During our consultation in all of those neighboring islands in my country, most of the youth tell us that they don't want to leave. They want to stay. So as the sea rises, so do the youth. We do not want to be labeled as a climate refugees. I know everyone here don't want to be like climate refugees. In the Pacific, people in the Pacific, Micronesia, Melanesia, Polynesia, we are bound to our ocean land. The ocean and land is part of our culture. And our land, losing our land is like losing our identity. And in the Marshall Island, if sea level rise keep on happening, there is something in our island that is really vulnerable, not just for our country, but for the Pacific Ocean. There is a ruined tomb that was made for the nuclear waste that was conducted. There was a nuclear testing in our country where they dropped 67 nuclear testing bombs. And they bring all these nuclear waste and store it in one of our islands, in Eniwetok Island. There, you will see all the nuclear waste. As I was mentioning before, if you come into our island, you will see the ocean side and Lungun side. So if sea level rise happen into that island, all those nuclear waste might affect environmental issues. And in that tomb over there, they also bring the Nevada nuclear waste into our country and store it. And it's really vulnerable for our country if sea level rise were to happen into our country. And that's why a lot of our youth are fighting and trying to learn more about climate change and environmental issues and make sure that our voices are heard. Right now, back in my country, the government, the people are fighting together. We have sustainable tree transport. We're trying to phase away fossil fuels for our country to be safe. But in my country, it's based out of fossil fuel, but other countries are not, like the big countries. That's why 1.5 is really important for our blue ocean to be there. 1.5 to stay alive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Manly. I think Manly went a bit more deeper than I asked, but it's very helpful. And I like the I like your statement that as the sea rises, the youths rise as well. I think that's what we have to do. We have to rise to the occasion. And the issue with the nuclear storage facility that's there, I like the fact that you bring out that, you know, many things that we might think are local, they're actually international. They have international repercussions if something happens. Um, and this is something that we need to also look at, that climate change might affect a particular country, but the consequences may actually have global repercussions. I don't think it's just the region, I think it's global. Because if you remember, there was this the big tsunami in Japan in 2011. A lot of the debris and stuff ended up in South America, on the coast of Peru and so on. So the currents can actually carry that throughout the world. So this is actually global. And this is something very important that we need to look at, that if they're protecting small islands, you might actually be protecting the world as well. So I want to move across to Indian Ocean Islands. Manly kindly um, led us into the aspect of sea level rise. So I'm gonna move over to Daksh and ask him to talk about, you know, what sea level rise means to the Indian Ocean Islands, and what are you doing about it over there. Daksh is actually the Vice President and Project Leader for Environmental Protection and Conservation Organization, EPCO, based in Mauritius. And he's also the focal point for Mauritius for the global network of civil society organizations for disaster reduction. Over to you, Daksh.
Thank you, Devon. So I come from the Indian Ocean. So I think I'm the only person here from the Indian Ocean and my friend. So we are not many. Um, so Mauritius is a very small island, but when I hear my different colleagues speaking, it's not that small. So we are 2,040 square kilometers. Uh, we have only a population of 1.3 million, so nothing to do with 100,000. So we are very mixed in terms of religion. So we have Hindus, Muslims, Chinese, like diversity groups, and this makes us very rich in our cultural, heritage, and it's in our food as well. So when we talk about sea level rise and Mauritius, I mean, we are already feeling it since some years now, and it took us a long time to really understand how to really cope with it. So right now, Mauritius depends a lot on tourism. This is our main economic pillar. And most of the infrastructure for tourism, hotels, villas, etc., are found next to the beach. So this is going to be a threat in the future when the sea level rise and surges, etc., are going to destroy those infrastructures. So there has been some relocation plan taking place, but this is going to be something we are still working on. From my organization, we are actually the only organization in Mauritius working on disaster risk reduction, and then we have the Red Cross. But working with we work a lot with the community, like the grassroots communities, but it's still hard to explain people really what is happening. The only thing they see is like their house is getting closer and closer to the sea. So they have seen these changes before. In front of their house there was like a beach, and now it's no longer there. And those people usually are staying next to the beach, and the government now is also trying to construct like sea walls to protect those infrastructures from getting destroyed by sea surges. When we talk about tsunamis, because this is something also I heard from my other colleagues, tsunami the Sumatra one that happened in 2004, it did come to Mauritius, even though it's a long way, but it was not a very strong one. So it did not really affect our island. But I know that now we have a national disaster management committee in Mauritius that has been set up. Um, it's preparing the population to get used to the drills and how to act when there's some warnings about these tsunamis. So sea level rise is a very slow process, and it's something that is happening very slowly. But when a tsunami strikes or there's a sea surges, this is something that causes direct devastation to the different communities. Devon also pointed out we are a member of GNDR. So if you all don't know what's GNDR, I would advise you to go online and find it. It's a global network for disaster risk reduction. So it's like an umbrella organization that takes all different organizations in the world working on disaster risk reduction. It's open to anyone. You can be a member. I think they already have 1,500 members globally. And it's very interesting because they are doing lots of work and sharing lots of information about what they are doing. But yeah, I mean, the topic for me, Mauritius, is sea level rise. But for us, the most disastrous calamity right now is flash flood happening in Mauritius. Crazy rain, crazy flooding, even lost lives in the past. So thank you. That's my feedback from Mauritius.
Okay, thank you, Daksh. And the last thing that you mentioned, actually is very important as well when it comes to sea level rise. I'm from Guyana, and the infrastructure in Guyana was actually done by the Dutch. And Guyana, well, the part where most of the people live is below sea level. And so whenever there is a lot of rainfall or so and there's floods, we cannot open the cokers to remove the water from the land, because if the sea is high, if you open the cokers, the sea just comes in. And so you have to stay there with the water until the sea goes down. So even with that, there is a correlation as well between rainfall or water coming from other sources and a high sea level. So I just wanted to point that out. Now we're going to move over to the other gentleman from Indian Ocean Islands, Mr. Raj Kumar Nagaraja. And Raj is he's working. He's a consultant with the Smallholder Agribusiness and Resilience Project. So he's an agriculture man. And we know that one of the things that happens with sea level rise is the agriculture sector usually is affected. So I just wanted him to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So for Marshall Island, sea level rise, youth rise. And for Mauritius, like what? Houses are getting closer to the ocean or beach or whatever. But for Sri Lanka, the people actually rising up because of the sea level rise. And also, when it comes to houses are gone already. So paddy lands are already gone. And then we also have lots of, fruit plants along the coast. They are all gone because of, seawater intrusion and also, saltwater intrusion, and also the coastal erosion is a huge problem. It's kind of a everyday occurrence in Sri Lanka. So people are really getting mad about it. And also we can see a lots of migration that is happening, because in the coastal area in Sri Lanka, rice is the staple food. Sometimes I think most people, or majority of the people, they eat all 3 meals, rice and curry. So we need a lot of rice, right? So we have rice cultivation, paddy cultivation in the inland coastal area, up in the hill, everywhere. So, but in the coastal area, the paddy cultivation is really going down. So therefore, the paddy prices are really coming up. The rice prices are really coming up. So therefore, the people are really rising up. And also lots of coconut trees are there along the coastal area. So 2.5 years ago, I know a coconut nut or or coconut is 50 rupees. Today it's 150 and 160, 150 to 160 rupees. So you can see how people are really rising up. Half a dollar. In US term, it's $0.50 right now. But earlier you can buy 3 actually for $1. So these are huge problem. And then migration from coastal area to inland, that is actually giving a lot of pressure. And also when you talk about land grabbing is also very important. Something is happening. And also all the international hotel chains, you know, what are they doing? They are coming into Sri Lanka for building hotels. So there again, you know, the coastal area, the paddy cultivation, other cultivation is actually going down. So it's a huge problem. There's another problem that I can tell you, that is the human-elephant conflict. Have you heard about human-elephant? Everybody wants to see elephants, right? But in Sri Lanka, it's a huge conflict. You know, every year we have around 100 elephants die, 100 people die, and around closer to 300 elephants actually die because, you know, people in the coastal area, they move into other areas for various livelihoods activities or various plantations or various cultivations. They actually destroy the forest area and things like this. So it's a huge problem. And also lots of people, they leave paddy cultivation or cultivation along the coastal area looking for alternative livelihoods opportunities and things like that. And therefore, the paddy cultivation is also going down. And also Sri Lankans, you know, every day when we have lunch, you know, I look for fruits because in Sri Lanka, every day we eat a lot of fruits. In the coastal area, you have banana, papaya, mangoes, jackfruit, and many other fruits. And then trees are actually falling off. So therefore, it's very hard to find fruits also. And I am also a nutrition specialist. So I always tell each and every Sri Lankan people, every day you have to eat 2 to 3 fruits. And then where do you find fruits? Yes, we can find fruits, but they are expensive because of this climate change impacts and things like that. And also, not only in the coastal area, coastal erosion, saltwater intrusion, but here in the inland also because of the climate change, lots of drought that is happening. So in the inland area also, it's hard to farm. So these are some of the issues that I can really talk about it when you're talking about sea level rise, you know, so saltwater intrusion and also contamination of fresh water. In Sri Lanka, you find rivers and lakes and then tanks everywhere, but still during the drought period, people find it difficult because, you know, because of the freshwater contamination in the coastal area, it's very difficult to find water as well. Maybe we can talk further when we have discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Raj. So, I think I want to stop here with this discussion and include you now. I think we have like about 26 minutes or so to go, so that's pretty good. And do we have moving mics around? Yeah, perfect. So we have moving mics. So just indicate by raising the hand. I think I'll take about 3 questions at a time. And let's see if we can have maybe 2 rounds at least. Okay, so. And if you can say where you're from, which country you're from. Having some technical difficulties there. We have another mic in front. You can take this one and we can share the other one.
All right, talo falava everyone, Pula Vinaka. My name is Baby Rose Sangyam Beetham. I'm from Samoa. I would like to ask a question to my friend Rose. She mentioned there was something about tsunamis. It came together with a volcano eruption. Back in Samoa, we do tsunami drills either twice or once throughout the whole year, ever since the 2009 tsunami that affected our island, right? So, but way before the tsunami, there were drills carried out throughout the whole island. So, when the tsunami hit, people knew when the siren ran, you know, tsunami warning everywhere. Everyone knew what to do, but the effect, I mean, the disadvantage was the wave hit the island early morning. Everyone was still asleep, and that was why some people couldn't evacuate and they couldn't move. And up until now, we still do our tsunami drills once or twice a year throughout the whole year. So my question for Rose is, did Tonga have any tsunami drills for the people? Because there was the tsunami came together with the volcanic eruption. Was there any tsunami drills carried out for the island? And because you mentioned that, there were warnings, but then you guys still went to the beach. And I also Googled, but then there were no results. So I just want to know, coming straight from a local citizen.
Okay,
if
so
there were
Rose, just take a note of that question. We'll take two more. Just indicate by raising the hand. And we are
Hi, Willa, I'm Lithia from Fiji. This is a question to Kenisha and Torrance. Thank you for explaining about how you manage natural disasters, especially the challenges with the people. But I would like to ask you, what is the most difficult part of the job? For both of you, thank you.
okay, so we'll take one more. You had a lot of time to think.
Hello. Hi. My question will go to Yvette. I see you talked about women empowerment a lot. One of the things that catch me was the food that were prepared by the women after cyclone. I've seen you've got a lot of lap lap, as I say. It's common in the Pacific that after we have a cyclone, for Fiji, of course, our common meal is rice and dal. And for you, I've seen that the common one is lap lap, which is for us, we call it mbele, and for Vanuatu, you call it cabbage. The question is, you're saying that during the cyclone or after the cyclone, most women are left behind because they have a lot of responsibilities. And does from your experience, where do the men come from? What do they do after the cyclone? Because you're focusing only on women. Thank you for that. But when any responsibility is given to men, that's my question.
Okay, so you spoke a lot about before, right? Getting information and so before it comes. So what happens after it actually hits? All right, so let's start with Yvette first, and then we'll go to Kenisha and then Rose.
Thank you for the question. I think that's a really good question for Vanuatu and also Pacific as well. So for the past experiences, given that Vanuatu have been experiencing 4 to 5 category 5 cyclone for the past few years, and men's responsibility after the cyclone was always depending on the short-term supplies from aid. See, and this is where we always talk about, traditional knowledge and practices. So when aid coming in, these men or our indigenous people start relying on this aid support, and they start ignoring the traditional practices and their food, how they're going to go about to prepare, like maybe in 3 weeks' time, they should rely on their own root crops and all those stuff. So men during that time after the cyclone, they keep on, that's what I've learned and I've been experiencing so far with the twin cyclone that we've come across last year. It happens that the NDMO and other departments were distributing food throughout the other communities. And they mentioning or they announced on the radio that it will be a 3 times supply of food. So first will be this month to this month, and then from this month to this month. And when people heard this, they start they already know that, oh, we have a supply from the 8 donors. And they start ignoring their own crops, their own root crop. And that's where it also influenced their focus on 8 donor support, the food especially, and not planting the crops to continue, long-term support. Yes. So I think main responsibility at the time, it's not really effective in terms of food supply. Yeah. I hope I answer your question. Thank you.
Just a follow-up. So is that linked to maybe like fetching the things, like carrying the goods? That's what they're doing? Okay. All right, Kenisha?
Yes, thank you for your question. I smile when you ask that question because the hardest part of my job is what keeps me going every day. It is what motivates me. And the hardest part of my job is having to say no when you really don't want to. And I will explain that further. In disaster management, or coming from my country in our disaster office, I am on a daily basis, you would have families come to you, parents, single parents, mothers, children who they do not have supplies to go to school or resources, and they're coming to the disaster office because they're hoping that in there you have supplies, because the ideology is that the disaster office has everything from food items to bedding and everything. So on a daily basis, I will have families come up to me, and it is very sad when a child walks up to you and they tell you they want a soap to bathe. That is all. That is the only request. I want to go to school. Do you have any soap so I can take a shower? And there are times when we genuinely do not have in the warehouse, but again, we would, amongst ourselves in the office, we'll find a way to get there. But it's even more difficult when a young man, and men in the Caribbean, men, we have that, our men are proud. So it takes a lot for a young man to come up to you and tell you, well, I have not eaten in 3 days, and I am on the brink, or I am considering suicide because I'm too ashamed to come out and say that, I need assistance. And there are times that we do not have, because our disaster office, we do not store food items to say like we have a warehouse with food items. It's when we are impacted or when we are preparing for the season, we may have those things. So the hardest part is not being able to assist everybody when you genuinely want to assist and the cases are genuine. So for me, what it does, it motivates me, and it brings out that empathetic nature. And I always tell people in disaster management, you have to be empathetic. You have to be, and so on a daily basis, I get up every day and I think my mind works in overtime trying to figure out how I can reach out to donor, which donor can I get, and what other supplies that my people will ask for outside of, and I'm not looking at when we are impacted or when a disaster, what is it that I can have in my warehouse that persons are asking for on a daily basis that can give them that comfort that, okay, at least I know where I can go to without any biasness or without feeling like I will be talked about on the road or outside. So again, that's the hardest part, not being able to provide support to everybody who needs it when they need it, and having to go home and appreciate. I think working as a director have given me a whole appreciation of, I never say I don't have. For me, like what you consider little to you is a lot for somebody out there. So it gives me that appreciation that I have more than enough, and I should be thankful. And again, I always look for ways to assist others. Thank you.
That's actually quite interesting, because I always thought about a disaster place as somewhere you just go to when there's a disaster. But the fact that people are going even outside of a disaster, I think that shows that the role you play is much more integrated in society. And that helps too, because whenever there's a disaster, they already know you, they know where to go.
Yeah. So for example, if there is a fire, like somebody house is burnt, and the morning we would get that individual or the family would get a report from the the district, the community asking for assistance from like bedding or appliances. Basically, that's the first point of contact for them to be able to build back themselves at least. So we would always be giving bedding mattresses, so at least they can sleep well. I give you the food you need now, but we can give you a little comfort that you can sleep through the night and find out how you're going to survive in the morning, basically. We have persons coming from our elderly home, and we are doing a lot of work now with persons with disabilities. So all those various groups are who we are assisting now, and that is outside of a disaster. Because I always feel that your disaster office, again, you do mitigation and preparedness. If you build resilience and you build capacity, I think when it comes to response, like everybody would have already been a lot more resilient, because our vision says that we're looking to build a resilient nation. And I think that can only be done if you empower everybody, at least put them in a better place than they are, and not always having to come to you to be, asking all the time. So that is my thinking going forward in the disaster office. Thank you.
Thank you, baby, for your question. My answer is, so before the tsunami and the volcanic eruption, the drills were done in like a wide span of time. Like it would be once every 3 months, like kinda. And this is only in the capital, right? There are no tsunami drills in the coastal communities or in the rural areas, none. Because our capital is right on the coast, it's like right next to the ocean, the drill is only done there probably because like there's more people there. But there's no tsunami drills in the coastal communities or the rural areas. And I'm glad that you asked that question, because this issue has been raised by a lot of people, but for whatever reason, there have been no drills there or sirens. In town, there's only one siren, which reaches like everyone in town. But even when there's a tsunami drill, it is only limited to the government ministries, the Ministry of Police and the Army. They're the ones doing the drills. And people, yeah, it's nothing to people. That was before the volcanic eruption. So after the tsunami, the drills have become more common, but it is now waning. The amount of drills are waning because the tsunami was traumatizing to a lot of people. So the amount is waning because once they do a tsunami drill and the siren is sounded, some people break down, some people faint because they think it's like another tsunami. So yeah, like the effects of the tsunami like are widespread physically, mentally, psychologically. It's a lot, and it's really sad. Thank you.
Well, I'm really concerned about the last thing you said, because I mean, the drills are important, right? And I mean, the siren brings back memories, but at the same time, you still have to be prepared. So how do we deal with that? Can we change the music, change the sound or something? I mean, these are things that maybe we might want to consider. All right, so I think we have enough time for another round of questions. So just raise your hand. Okay. All right, so I see Luis in front, and then we'll go to Salote and the Philippine princess across there.
Thank you very much, Devin. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to all the panelists for sharing your honest experience and very powerful work that you're doing in your respective island countries. Coming from Samoa, and we all have my brother from Mauritius was talking about the richness of our culture and heritage, which makes us the stronger people to build we're more resilient in terms of being the caretakers of the Pacific Ocean. And I'm trying to going back to the experiences in the early 90s where Samoa was hit badly by back-to-back 2 cyclones, and it destroyed our taro industry. And Samoa was one of the best exporters in terms of taro to the entire export market. And what happened was there was an introduction of the fungus, the Phytophthora caucasia that destroyed our best cultivar. And since then, it's been more than 20 years over the last many years that the government utilized all the resources in terms of breeding more cultivars so that we will have a variety that will be tolerant to the fungus. But having said this, and then the 2009 tsunami that really traumatized as what been said by our sister from Tonga. And we all feel the same experiences because we've lost the most vulnerable ones, which was the children and the elderly people who can't run to the uphills. But I think I'm trying to think outside and ask this question: how prepared are we, the small island countries, to respond? Because we keep on saying we have so much limited resources. We don't have the finance. But one thing that I've learned from Samoa is that no matter how small we are and very limited in terms of resources and capacity, but what we have is that we pool the resources across the sectors, not just the New York, which is the national emergency response center, but we utilize everyone, our family, our friends, our neighboring islands, to come in together to be able to respond and to be able to mitigate the risk, and so therefore we protect our small islands. And I think that's why we are so resilient. That we always like to sing this song that we are the people of the one ocean, and we're very proud of our own culture, indigenous. So keep fighting, rise up to the challenges. We got, and we see you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that was really a comment, but there's something in your comment that I'd like Raj to respond to later, and that's the issue of species being destroyed, because you mentioned about the when the seawater comes in, you lose these crops. Are you losing specific species, and what are you doing about that? So just think about that. Okay, Salote.
Yes, thank you so much to all the panelists. I was really moved by your sharing, your professional experiences, especially your personal experiences. It was really moving, and I would like to congratulate you and also honor your memories, your linkage and your interconnectedness with each other and to the Vanua. My comment is, this is something that's worth a mention, and I'm sorry for bringing this up. I'm not the right person to be sharing this, but there's supposed to be one student from the Solomon Island that's supposed to be here. So I want to share something regarding the resilience of the Solomon Island people. Firstly, as we speak, 5 islands, habitat islands, have already been completely submerged underwater as we speak. And that is worth a mention. So when you're talking about relocating and all these loss and damage funds and all these sentimentals, Solomon Islands, 5 islands have already been submerged completely underwater. For Fiji, 278 communities, coastal communities will have to be displaced by 2050. That is less than 25 years from now. And we've only successfully, still in the process of successfully displacing 5 to 7 communities as we speak. This is the reality that we're facing in the Pacific Islands. And regarding the Solomon Islands, there's a community in the Langa Langa Lagoon where they build artificial islands without the use of heavy machinery. Artificial island. If you don't believe me, please search it. Langa Langa Lagoon in the Malaita province, where they're building artificial islands from their bare hands. Bare hands. They don't have a proper source of water. They have to paddle in the canoe to go into the mainland and get the source of water. When I talk about resilience in the Pacific, we already have the practical aspects and the experiences. All we have to do is maneuver together, communicate, and let's work towards this, a better future. And lastly, I would like to ask the panelists if you could mention during the disasters in your own countries, what are some of the communicating tools that you use? I heard from my sister from Tonga, Miss Rose Colot, you mentioned that your internet was destroyed completely and you were out of communication from the surrounding countries or out of contact with the world. What was some of the tools of communication, whether it was radio, whether it was a wireless coconut, or, what were some of the communication tools that you use, not just for Tonga, but for the panels? Because communication is what gets the job done, so we can also proceed with addressing the issues during a natural disaster. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that is essentially why we have a panel like this, because we recognize that there are experiences that could be shared between the regions. There are things that are already being done in different places. And it's just that among SIDS, we don't necessarily have this interaction that's so important. Although you address your question to everyone, I'm going to ask Daksh to respond because he has not answered anything in this round as yet. Okay. All right. So over to the Philippines.
Hi. First of all, I would like to extend my appreciation for this panel. I'm really inspired by the work you do in your countries. Especially like Philippines is also one of the most vulnerable countries about climate. So this is a cyclone season or typhoon season now in the Philippines. So almost every month or every week we experience different types of cyclones, and we places before that hasn't been hit by typhoons are being hit now. So most of the communities are not prepared for those kinds of, when there's typhoon, there are flash floods, flooding, and other natural disasters come. But my comment is actually resonating with her point regarding like men being proud, because I just want to highlight that patriarchy and gender stereotypes are not only affecting women but also men. So back in 2023, I published a paper on the small island called Boracay Island. So their primary source of income is tourism. But back in 2018, so Boracay Island experienced different types of closure. So from 2018, they experienced closure due to the rehabilitation of the island. And the second closure shortly after that was because of a typhoon. So it badly hit the island. So it was also closed for another year. But after 1 month of opening, the COVID lockdown happened. So it happened for almost a year in the island. So they were not accepting any visitors, therefore they don't have any sources of income. So while I was doing my study data gathering back in 2022, so we interviewed a lot of women, because like my focus is informal tourism sector, which is mostly women. So some of the women said like their husband committed suicide, and they know a lot of people who committed suicide because their men are expected to provide to be breadwinners, and they don't have any alternative source of income. So they said like instead of them being, their man who being removed from them, they will just commit suicide. So I think it's also affected like some high school boys who are committing suicide during those 3-year lockdown because of the typhoon, the rehabilitation. So I just want to connect it to the discussion in the earlier panel when someone said that diversification of income generation in the tourism islands is called for. But yeah, I think I just want to hear from the panel if you have similar experiences about men due to patriarchy and gender stereotypes are happening, something like that. Thank you.
All right, well, we do have limited time. So I'm gonna ask Manly to respond to that. Well, I didn't want to, no pun intended, Manly, but maybe from Marshall Islands, what are the perspectives? How do men feel and about their roles, and if that is affected in some way by disasters. By the way, Philippines is one place that I admire because of the way in which women are so vibrant and active in society. But I always believe that in cases like yours, there has to be particular attention to our boys because women empowerment could actually go overboard as well, and then we just neglect the boys. And so we really need to have that balance indeed. So I'm going to ask Manly to start, and then we'll come to Daksh making a response to technology, and then Raj about species that may be lost.
Thank you. So in case of respond in our communities regarding the men, so the men are really active in respond during disaster. And I remember during one of our consultation in one of our atoll, there is a there was a use in bag of king tide, and one of the small bridge that connect two of the islands that people used to travel was really was damaged. And after that, king tide, all the men gather and then build that bridge again from scratch. Like they gather all the rocks from the lagoon and ocean side and to rebuild it again. So in case of disaster response, men in our country is really, they're really active. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so to come back to the question about communication with the communities, I think it's something everyone wants to know. There is no direct formula. It's something very important. And different countries have found different ways of communicating with different communities. But we all agree that we can't take a big researcher, academic person, bring him to a village and have fishermen and do a PowerPoint presentation and talk about technical stuff. This will never work. So our way we are operating in Mauritius is we are using the different leaders in villages. So sometimes you have a main old kind of, if we are working with the fishermen communities, we take the old fisherman who everyone respects, everyone listens to. So he's the first contact person. We also use the village president to gather the people. Actually, right now we are working on an EU-funded project on seaweed farming. So we are working a lot with the fishermen communities and the farmers. So we are creating WhatsApp groups as well. So once we have the attendance sheet of everyone, so we communicate updates about the project. And there's different ways because those people also, they are not really active on mobile phone. So sometimes passing the message through radio, newspaper, especially the news also, because they watch the news, local news, every day on their TV at 7:30 p.m. So if you want a message to pass on some project that's happening, that's the time to do it on TV. So these are some of the methods, but of course there are different other ways of communicating with communities, but unfortunately there's no direct and easy way. Thank you.
So talking about, species loss and also biodiversity and then ecosystem services losses, that's also happening in Sri Lanka. For example, in many areas in Sri Lanka, people can't go to the beach and, play or walk around. So it's not possible sometimes. That is one. And also if you see the IUCN red list or something like that, so lots of flora and fauna is actually on the verge of, endangered or extinction. That is another thing. And also the coconut trees, talking about coconut trees again. So we have a traditional coconut trees, that will take about 5 to 7 years to bear fruits. But nowadays, as an alternative thing, we have coconut trees that can bear fruit within 3 to 4 years time. So that is another alternative that we are doing it. And also drought tolerant, salt tolerant, paddy cultivations are going on, but sometimes people don't like the taste of that rice, that rice. So therefore, sometimes people say, oh, you have imported rice from China, I'm sorry. So maybe they don't like to eat that kind of, so it doesn't actually accept their palate, that one. And also human elephant conflict, we were talking about it, but we were really worried about, we are losing, our elephants. But last year we did a census or whatever, and we found out we have more than 6,000 elephants in our country. It's too many actually for us. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Raj. So what I want to do, we're going to end the way we started. So I'm going to give Terence the last word to wrap things up.
All right, thank you very much. And so we've spoken about the various hazards. Now, all our regions or countries have vulnerabilities, and we have hazards that can and will continue to impact. We do talk a lot about climate change, and climate change is causing the hazards to become more frequent, more intense, and we have to be prepared. One of the, we also talk a bit about how about the drills, exercises, but public education and information is important. So people need to know the hazards that can impact them, know how these hazards can and will impact, and know what they can do, okay, to respond, to save lives, right? Because it's a whole of country, whole of community approach, and it begins with the individual. We have to empower people to take charge of their safety, their lives. We must do that because when there's a tsunami, okay, it's not the government minister or the prime minister or the president, but it's the individual who is on the beach, the individual who is in the car driving to the beach. These are the people who have to take actions to save lives. So we must empower our people to ensure that they can respond adequately. Thank you.
Awesome. That's the best way to end the session. And thank you so much for being here. And we're open to discuss afterwards. I think there's a snack break or something. So feel free to talk to any of the persons on the panel and join me in thanking them again for such a nice session.
Hi, sorry. Snack break was announced, but actually there's no coffee break now. Of course, they take a few steps, whatever. But we'll be moving to the final keynote, and then we'll have the coffee break. Yeah. So stretch your legs, and we'll start, I think, in 10 minutes.